I have now. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for participating in the joint meeting of the North Texas Renewable Energy Group. That's myself, Randy Boys, chairman, and then also we're going to be hearing, because it is a joint meeting, from the North Texas Electric Auto Association, and we'll be participating in a three-person panel for most of the discussion about the future of Texas energy pricing, along with Sandy from the Texas Consumers Agency. And so we will get to that panel discussion in just a minute. To dispose quickly of the NTEAA-NTREG parts of the meeting details, the monthly meeting details, I do want to point out that we are coming up on the busiest season of the year. March and April for us is a time when we're requested to be out in public speaking to renewable energy. It sort of crescendos up into Earth Day there at the end of April. And so we're always looking for volunteers. I think we had a couple of days last year where we had 2 or 3 events going on the same day. So we need to pull a little bit deeper into people who are just willing to go out, answer questions. We'll give you the placards and banners to sit there and just talk to what you know and tell them that you'll get back to them on anything that you don't. So always welcome those volunteers. Both of our communications co-directors couldn't be here today, so I'm not going to go through what's going on with our upcoming meetings. We'll get back to the membership. We'll send out emails to address those topics. A couple of things that are coming up is the Texas Solar Energy Association is having its first in a couple of years now, a strategy meeting in Austin this Tuesday. Thankfully, they are going to do it virtually, so I don't try to have to juggle 4 other meetings, but there's a lot of topics that they do excellent work on this year, and it isn't why we're having the strategy meeting, but it will be one of the things I'm sure we'll talk about is the American Solar Energy Society is hosting their annual conference in Austin this October. And so there's already a couple of committees, the local host committees, the national conference committees, et cetera. So I'll be able to report back next month on what the TXSES strategy meetings. It's a full day thing, professional facilitator involved, et cetera. So should be some interesting information coming back on that. And if anybody chooses and wants to be involved in participating, either a North Texas awareness or specifically with the Austin event, they're looking for volunteers. So that's the only business that I have to talk to. John, go ahead and wander over there, talk to your group.
Good morning. Hello, my name is John Lowe. I appreciate the invitation and the ability to do this joint meeting. I'm with communications of NTEAA, and Ron is here to talk a little bit about our organization in general so that people have an idea of what we do and our mission. So Ron, can I just ask you to make a couple of comments real quick?
Okay.
You can click on that, can't you? Here I come.
Come on down.
Come on down. All right. Well, I'm Ron Swanson. I'm the president of the organization, and I'm looking out over this massive crowd today. And I want to tell you that I've been to a number of these. We used to do joint meetings with the NTEAA-NTREG for a couple of 3 years. We did joint meetings, and I can always remember that we used to be a little small group of in the NTEAA-NTREG. Had probably 40 or 50 or 60 people in the meeting, and we had our little group of people who would come to the meeting. And now we have more people there than NTEAA-NTREG, so good for us. The electric vehicle people have outnumbered the NTEAA-NTREG. So I just wanted to make a point of that. But we've been an organization since probably the 70s, and our main mission is to promote electric vehicles. So we're out there every chance we get promoting electric vehicles. And guess what? There's some electric vehicle charging stations in the parking lot of this building out there right now. I actually plugged my car into one of them. So It's a big difference from the days when we were looking for 110-volt outlets to plug our cars into when we would be driving around. And things have changed. We changed from a group that was really a hobbyist organization where we were building these electric cars before there were electric cars to a group that's now a bunch of electric car owners. We go around and look for the next great electric car that's coming out. So it's really a big change. But it's a change for the better because now the mass of people are looking at electric cars. So we've gone from an evolution of what is an electric car to how do I get an electric car? And I think that's really a big thing. All right. Thanks. Hope everybody enjoys the meeting.
So today we're going to talk about the future of electricity pricing in North Texas, as well as North Texas specifically. We're going to sort of do this in a panel format. There are 3 short briefings that we're going to give here at the beginning. John is not necessarily talking about the future of energy pricing, but when you buy an electric vehicle and as transportation in general electrifies across the state, a residence, for example, if I use the average residence and the average vehicle, you're going to increase your electricity consumption by about 1/3. And if you didn't already care about electricity prices, you're going to care even more. Today, part of the, we aren't in a mass market yet. The prices will come down. The technology, it's really the engineering mostly is changing. Those prices will come down, but the cost of fuel is one of the big benefits of owning an electric vehicle. Not to mention, if you do things right, even West Virginia can do it right, sort of. It's a cleaner fuel. So, you still have to worry about where's that electricity coming from? And that's part of so we have 3 speakers here today. You know who John is, you know who I am. Our 3rd speaker, Sandy Haverlah, is from the Texas Consumer Association. I said agency before, apologies. It is a nonprofit. It is a consumer advocacy group. She spends her time and has spent decades of her time in Austin promoting the best interests of all of us here in the room and out in virtual space who have to buy, not just things in general, but when you're talking about energy, transportation, heating, etc., these are things you have to do. And so, how much that costs, and whether you're a low and moderate income household where you can't, it's like, okay, I paid the rent. Now I want the house warm and I got to get to work. Do I have money left over? So these are important topics. She also serves on the board of a number of nonprofits, been involved in insurance cases. I know that they're an intervener on the current Encore rate case. She's local representative. I shouldn't say local representative. She's a representative, and I believe possibly on the board of the Environmental Defense Fund, specializing in Texas, et cetera. If she needs to say anything better than what I just said, she's going to get her chance at the beginning of her part. But to start off, we're going to have, again, those 3 short briefings of who are we and what do we want to throw on the table in this discussion of the future of energy pricing, electricity pricing in Texas. And then the bulk of the meeting will be an open discussion. We've got some prompt questions that we'll address, but the audience, both live and virtual, is going to be invited to throw those topics out because I know I've enjoyed the conversations I've had with these folks, so hopefully you will as well. John, take it away.
Thank you. You can find my presentation here. Just a quick note on the numbers you'll see on my slide.
Just give us another second.
Sure, this is sort of a precursor comment.
Minimize.
It's not real easy to find good information on the number of electric vehicles out there. So I take that with the numbers you see with a bit of a grain of salt. And
Well, Buzz knows exactly.
There you go.
well, I should have contacted you.
There we go.
All right. So the numbers you see on the slide, 259 electric vehicles in the North Texas area. that's really what our group is about. So that's what I focused on. 34% increase from 2024. And just to give you a frame of reference, there's nearly 7 million total vehicles in the North Texas region.
Basically, plug-in hybrids, or
Yeah. Mostly pickup trucks. Pickup trucks have got to be at
The
least
6.8 million.
mostly pickup. So in Texas, there's 700,000, and I've got the reference down here, Texas license plate org. I got this data through by going to the DMV, and it referenced this group. So that's the source of the information. 700,000 vehicles is about 3% of all the vehicles in the state of Texas. And these numbers, the 37% in North Texas, 25% in Houston. Interesting still, the largest number of electric cars are both Teslas, Model Y and Model 3. That hasn't changed in a while.
No.
Next slide. Oh, you got there. So how do people charge their cars? Obviously the most important question for our meeting today, and about 80% of that is at home. Now that's not a number I can reference from Texas. It's a national estimate, so I'm just throwing that up there. So it's probably true for us here as well. In August, we had about 600 level 2 chargers. And the level 2 charger, best way to describe that is it provides electricity at 6 to 11 kilowatt at a shot. So it's pretty darn low. It's essentially a 220 plug for the people that are more electricity oriented. But it's a low level. It takes a long time to charge cars. That's what we're using in the parking lot here from Blink. And the data that cropped up out of, and my source here is MS Word Copilot. So
Is that better than just saying the web?
you tell me.
So is that
Yeah.
UFW or is that statewide? Because that number 609 seems really low.
No, that's just North Texas.
That's, okay, that's.
Yeah, I'm back to the North Texas data.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
See, it says on title charging infrastructure in the.
That's supposedly the reference. 35% have offer free charging. Now
Really?
that could change. Yeah, this was in 2024, late 2024 to 25. That I assume this number came down.
Yeah, Stonebriar will start charging apparently.
Yeah, Volta has now taken over the Shell, Volta Shell, which is now Jolta from down under. And I noticed it last night because it wasn't in the Shell app anymore.
Yeah.
But the Dallas Stars headquarters still has it in the Shell app.
Oh,
So I got to check that out.
Yeah.
But it's now like 32 cents a kilowatt hour. And
For level 2?
right. I mean, you might as well go over to the Tesla site over there and charge and get it done quicker. Yeah. But and then they want to have a membership.
Well, John, if you need a reference for that number, I see you have one, but while at Encore, just a year and a half ago, we did that, and it was 40%. These are only the public level 2 chargers, so everybody who owns a vehicle probably has one at their house. But the public ones were 40% free at that time. Yeah.
My company, TIAA, at their corporate headquarters in Frisco, has 100 free level 2 chargers for their employees.
Yeah, that'd be nice if that started occurring more often.
We're gonna have, I think, around 2,500 employees, give or take.
Wow.
There. The 15-story building, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And it appears from the data I saw that the primary operators are Tesla, Blink, and ChargePoint. And these are retail outlets, hotels. In some places, Blink pops up a little bit more in garages and parking lots. Next slide, please. Okay, at the level 3 charging stations, which I pulled out as 50 kilowatt hour to 400. So that's the size, that's the power range for something that's labeled a level 3. That's fast charging and DC charging. The newer stations, I think, are tending toward 300 plus, moving away from the smaller 100 to 125 level chargers. It's really moving up. I think it's partially because there was movement in the electric car industry before we lost the tax incentives to go into 400 volt, 800 volt cars. So you needed the faster charging stations. So it was a movement more toward the faster charging stations. We'll see how this all plays out when we end up in the next
And
couple of years.
Alphatronics is coming out with a gigawatt charger.
Yeah. We'll see those eventually. Yeah. So in addition to Tesla, Blink, and ChargePoint, the other operators in this area, IONNA, Pilot Flying J, Mercedes-Benz, Electrify America, mostly at Walmarts, EVgo, Rivian, and the Walmarts are now coming out with their own brand. I think they're using Alphatronic.
Yes, they are, and ABB.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, there are Florida, Arizona, Colorado, and I forgot which others that are doing ABB chargers. They're, if you Tampa Chris on YouTube, you can watch one of his, you can see them. They're like just about as tall as the Alphatronics units, and they have a gigantic screen on them. You know, but compared to the Alpha unit, they don't give you the charging curve detail. So it's kind of like 6, 7.
So for you Buc-ee's aficionados, I pulled that out separately just so that you know that they're mostly focused on Tesla and Mercedes-Benz. And I assume they will branch out too. Next slide, please. So the pricing table you look at here are for the DC chargers, the high-speed chargers. I'm not going to go through it all, but you could see the range. Couple of points. Tesla, when you see 14 cents to 34 cents, they're going to be using time of day pricing. So they have a couple of windows in there. You can get 14 cents, like what, from midnight to 3 in the morning, whatever. And then they go up from there.
Walmart is also going to time of day pricing.
Electrify America, IONNA, the number here, the reference that I have from Don is that when he pulled this data, it was in the month of December. IONNA is fairly new to this region, and so this is really more promotional pricing from IONNA. So don't take that as you might see different prices at the IONNAs when you go out there in January. EVgo, ChargePoint, you can see the range. Interesting thing about ChargePoint is that most of their station, the pricing is set by the station owner. That's their business model. So that's going to vary quite a bit. Okay, next slide, please. Also talking with Randy, he wanted to make sure that we threw in a slide about level 2 charges. We're back to level 2 from level 3. Excuse me. This is for home charging, which is essentially level 2. And so I pulled out a couple of offerings that are out there in the the programs you can use to find residential pricing of electricity. And so Chariot Energy has got a pricing plan. The actual charge for the electricity is 8.65 cents. They have a free night, but they have a monthly fee of $9.95. So their average cost at 1,000 kilowatts is going to be 12 cents, 12.6 cents on the average. Champion is another style of a plan, which has the same price throughout the day and night, but has no monthly fee. So you can see it's a little bit higher, but it's still within a reasonable range. And the real difference here is that it's got a no monthly fee. That monthly fee really cranks up the cost. Atlantex, it's got a higher daily fee, no night charges, and no monthly fee, and it's still in the same range. So it's really interesting. You can't just go by the prices on the left-hand column. You got to run the whole model through to see how it might affect you. And again, this is exactly at 1,000 kilowatts.
So do they know when you're using your level 2 versus, your dishwasher?
No, this is use at any time during the day.
Oh,
Now, well, I should say this. these numbers over here are based on an assumption of how much night use on these nightly plans. And that varied from 40% to 60% when they did the calculations in their model, when you look online. So you have to think about how you're going to use it. And that's a key point. I want to talk about that here with Reliant. It's the highest price. This is essentially the plan I use. 0 cents at night, 0 monthly fee, but they also zero out the charge of Encore, the distributor, here for the nightly charge. Now Encore has a flat fee of $4.23, something like that in our area. But these guys zero out. Now, I don't know why they do that, because it's not their.
Well, they still pay it to Encore. They
Yeah.
just don't get it from the consumer. They get the per kilowatt only.
Right.
Per-
What are their names?
Oh, God. Who here doesn't hate when their renewal comes up and has to figure out what they're going to do, how to choose?
I know.
And
All
for-
they like is this.
Yeah, go to power to choose and just put in select electric car options.
And that same plan will probably not be available in another year.
Yeah.
Are they committed? Do you have a commitment for some?
All of them do. I don't think there's any that have less than a 6-month commitment.
Yeah, at least 6 months to a year.
And again, these are with I don't want to get into, Sandy might choose to get into how consumers view their purchase of this deregulated electricity. But these illustrations are only good if you're using 1000 kW, not 1001.
Right.
It could be twice as much for that next kilowatt, or it could be less.
You go to 2 kilowatts.
No, it depends on the plan. Absolutely depends on the plan. It can go up or down. And then again, you won't be able to buy that plan next year.
And the point, you look at this Reliant and you might say to me, why would you pick the highest price one, even over here on the average? Because the vast majority, I use that night charging for my car, which is the vast majority of my, not vast majority, but over half is for my car. And I don't pay this. This is not my cost.
And let me point out, for those who have solar, they're also offsetting it during the day, so their consumption during the day would also be low.
And if you have battery backups.
Oh, you just fill that thing every night and use it whenever. James.
Do you have a slide on managed charging plans?
No,
So
I'm not sure.
the one I know about, and I don't know if we're supposed to be mentioning names, but since you go anywhere, so Octopus Energy has a discount if you have an electric vehicle charger that they can communicate with. So there's a catch there.
That's a good plan.
Yeah.
Good point. I should have pulled one of those plans out.
Well, they're changing so fast. I don't know how you can keep up.
Yeah.
With wall box.
So I just wanted to throw one other plan up here. There are some plans out there that got fixed rates throughout the day, but they offered this ridiculous. One of them is $125. So it comes up looking like this on the Bill Cruncher program or the
Or that illustration.
Yeah, yes. And so that's why I threw that up there. Just that there are still some other things that don't even involve the electrical car options that could be good for people. So next slide, I got to get off on it. And so just a quick comparison of the cost between an EV and an ICE vehicle. If we drive 12,000 miles a year, 1,000 miles a month, I used an average of 3.0 kilowatt hour to drive your car, an electric car, or 30 miles per gallon for an ICE car. That's the energy used to go that distance, 1,000 miles, and this is the cost. I used the 7.9 cent one up here to give the best illustration. But I don't know if 30 miles per gallon is really that appropriate in the North Dallas area.
Well, I mean, if you go and read the window sticker, there are vehicles that say their combined mileage is over 30. However, you go look at just for sedan class vehicles, DOT fleet is below, it's like 18.5 miles per gallon. So, nobody gets that mileage, but 30 is certainly generous. There you go.
Yeah. And even so, and this was at 245. That's about the lowest rate I've seen locally. So this is the difference in cost. And that's about what I drive a month, it's 1,000 miles. So my cost is lower than this. I generally come in about $9 because they charge it back.
All right. So that is one view into how electricity is used and may increasingly be used. And I'm actually happy that you brought some illustrations up of the plants, because as complicated as it is to buy electricity for your house, which is kind of a known entity, now you throw your transportation in there, or businesses have to throw transportation in there. James correctly brought up managed charging. We will get to in the discussion these possible futures of, should electricity as an industry consider the interactions with what I like to think of as producing consumers, the people who can vary their consumption behavior, not just when the air conditioner is on in August, but can decide, oh, I'll charge at night, or oh, I'll allow it to be managed, etc. So these are all very important points. Okay, with that, Sandy is going to be our next briefer, and we'll talk about kind of how the market is structured and where we have pressure points, if any, on changing that future, but more or less grounded in the fact. I'll get a little bit more on the optimistic fantasy. I mean, all the things I talk about can happen, but will they? Sandy will lay the groundwork for why the system is like it is right now and what we can do about it.
Thank you. I think Joel had a question first, and then we'll move.
Okay.
He's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I don't know how we're doing this. I guess I can interrupt it. On that last slide, I did not understand that last column at all. 33 cents per, you had a cost. Can you show that last slide again? Because the label on that column did not make sense, at least to me.
Yeah. If you presume, I've got my back, I think, to the camera. If you presume a vehicle can go so far down.
Can you show us the slide?
Yes. So
and then you can answer the question.
So far down the road on a kilowatt of energy, a kilowatt hour of energy is about 4 miles of travel. Now, for some vehicles, it can be as low as 3.5. For some, it's 4.7. For a dump truck, it might be 1. Some are 6. If you can drive like my son, who can get 45 miles of every gallon out of his ice vehicle because of the way he drives. So you have to make some assumptions. How many miles are you getting per kilowatt hour of energy?
Can you show the slide, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cost per month, not cost.
So cost per mile is $81.
No, I'm sorry.
And $26. So I'm very confused.
That's cost per month. It isn't there. Cost per month. Yes. And thank you for catching that. Yeah. I'm sure you weren't.
And that's for 1,000-mile month, I guess.
Roughly, yes, 12,000 miles per year. In Texas, the average mileage is 15,440 miles.
So it's 2.6 cents per mile, and
440.
So it's 2.6 cents per mile and 8.1 cent per mile.
Correct.
All right.
And again, this was with an illustration of 12,000, which is
I get it. I just couldn't understand the math.
No. And that's a rounded figure. Again, in Texas, we drive more than the national average by more than 3,000 miles per year. So those are, again, going to amplify these deltas as opposed to minimizing.
Right. We can move on.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
As an electric car owners, don't you pay the state $200 a year?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
If you take those very generous $2.45 for gas and very generous 30 miles per gallon, that's a lot of miles of gas. That's about 25.
Now you still have to compare it to the 75 that everyone else is going to pay. So it's 125 penalty. No. So they'll give you a rebate.
No. It's 200 plus.
Oh, we pay the 75 and the 200?
Yeah, we pay both.
Okay. So
Well,
yes, that's a Texas present from the legislature.
Yes.
To make up for the, by the way, average, I figured about $70 per vehicle that they're losing in the road gas tax they're gonna charge you back 200
Right.
just because they could.
A lot of states are doing it now, including Colorado. and
Most of them
New
are
Jersey.
doing it by weight and travel. All that data is in the DMV database.
Yeah.
I would
They
be
know
more
how
than
many miles
happy.
you drive, 'cause they do
Somebody
it all the time.
said to register their Tesla was like over $1,000 in Colorado. And versus us, 300 for our Blazer.
Well, yeah, but the ice car costs a lot higher too.
We paid $550 in Denver for our old Ford Escape.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just paid about that for my grandkids Civic.
All right. Sandy, talk to us about we've been talking about electricity pricing
Right.
of those prices or what makes them up. Sandy's gonna give us some grounding in that.
And just a comment about the $200 because we worked on that for several sessions before it passed, and it was varying amounts of money. Obviously, the state claimed they wanted to replace the gas tax, but I think as a trend, you're going to see the state probably across the board ultimately switch all the vehicles to just a standard amount because the gas tax is now being pilfered for schools and other items in the budget and not being used for roads. They're using other money for roads. I mean,
In Texas,
in
less
Texas,
50% of your gas tax goes to the Department of Transportation.
right. So to compensate for that down the road, obviously the state has messed that up and can't undo what they've started to do. So they're going to probably over the next course of a couple of decades, make everybody just pay a set price. Electric vehicles are getting picked on right now, obviously, but under the excuse of the gas tax, but it will eventually change for everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
So does that mean it would drop the gas tax at the pump?
No, because they use it for schools and other items. It's a hidden tax for
So
the
would pay a gas, if we have an ice, would pay a gas tax and some kind of a road registration tax for gas?
I would guess that they would probably move to that, yes. It's hard to say because the budget is so
Screwed up.
screwed up in the state of Texas, yes, that they don't, the policy has been for years, don't say we're taxing Texans because if we pass a tax,
Right.
you're going to get unelected. So you're getting taxed, but you're getting taxed in very hidden ways. That gas taxes is sort of a beauty for them because most Texans, really, the younger folks don't know what's in there. If you remember, there used to be a sticker on the gas pumps years ago that told you it was in there. It's still in there, but it's not being used for what it was initially passed for. The federal government also has a portion of that tax as well that supposedly comes back to us for road money. But in terms of our portion of it, it's really not being used for what it was intended for. But it allows for them to collect a lot of revenue in the state for other purposes and not, quote unquote, raise your taxes. So, here we are, and I don't see that changing because it's been tried over and over again for a lot of sessions and many sessions now, and it's probably not gonna change. So I think the discussion that will happen in the next couple of sessions, because that $200 took about 3 sessions to pass in the first place, there'll be a little bit of a lull, but then there will be a discussion about the decrease in the use of that tax or the income of it because so many vehicles are getting better gas mileage, people transitioning to electrics, and then slowly they'll probably move into a phase of just charging everybody one set price. And saying, this is what we need from everybody and kind of equalizing everybody in the end. I guess the bottom line.
In summary, what you're saying is the picture is about $100 for road registration for your vehicle, $200 just for grins, and then get federal and state gas tax at the pump if you use the pump.
Yes.
So you pay 3 times.
As use of gas goes down, you're going to see the state react to that. I mean, when that happens, when you start seeing that leveling and then the use of gas at the pump go down eventually, which will eventually happen given it is slower, I think, than what people expected. But given the amount of electric vehicles and people buying them and purchasing, in addition to people driving less, and when the price of gas goes up, they drive less, all of those factors being taken into, it won't be something that happens tomorrow, but I don't see the state trending in a way that lessens what they bring in under the ability to charge a fee. Let's put it that way. Yeah. This includes your state parks, going to the parks. This includes really anything that they can charge you a fee on that will allow them for collection and not being able to call it a tax. We tried to float a bill some years ago just out of curiosity to see what happened that would rename everything in code fee to tax. Just to see, and it was just a talking point. Really, we knew it wouldn't move anywhere, but several of the legislators got a kick out of it because really everything in Texas is turned to fees, and they're really taxes for us all. So today, though, we are here, and speaking of fees, we are here to, and I'm sorry, I can't see the chat right now, but if there are questions in the chat, someone let me know. Our organization, Texas Consumer Association, has been around since the 60s and worked on a variety of consumer issues. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, I started out really on insurance when I started with the organization. I was an intern in 1988. I was hired out of college in 1989, and that was my first session in 1989. And then Ann Richards came in, and the state decided to deregulate and let you choose from a competitive price on your auto insurance. And that it's been that long since we've done the deregulation of the auto insurance market. And then in the late 90s, the state decided to break up over the series of a couple of sessions, 99 sort of being the session that's culminated. The monopoly utility structure that we had and develop it into what we have as our quote unquote competitive market, and what you all were just complaining about, which is the power to choose and competitive market in the state of Texas. And in that breakup, there were different categories of companies because the companies were all combined into one as monopolies that did both generation and transmission and distribution and the retail side. For those of you old enough, y'all remember that you would have one company, Houston Power and Light, became Centerpoint in a breakup of multiple companies. Same with Encore in its previous iterations of companies as well. So the one company that remained regulated under that was a transmission and distribution company, which is the company that puts in your lines, your poles, your wires, and substations and distributes it out. And the theory behind that was we don't want multiple companies putting in multiple lines, which is obviously something we really don't want to have to happen. You don't want companies to come in and do digging up and having their own lines. It would have been really something that people in the, to have multiple companies allowed to do that would have just been a nightmare in terms of infrastructure. So what Encore, for most of you, I assume, live in Encore territory, does is they bring your electricity to the end consumer. You all just saw a bunch of charts on who provides what. Those are your retail providers, all those companies listed providing you on a per kilowatt hour basis or buying in bulk 1,000 kilowatt hour basis your electricity. And for your part of the state, that is different than other parts of the state. City of Austin remains with City of Austin. We're all combined. We don't have a choice. Our retail, wholesale, everything that goes through City of Austin, same with City of San Antonio, and also for people who remained in areas with co-ops, which are largely rural, although some of them in Texas are now growing very large because of suburban growth. So But most of you sound like you're having to go to Power to Choose and choose your electricity and do the comparing of the pricing. This whole deregulation structure was supposed to lower rates, which actually did lower the kilowatt hour rate from the time that it happened in the 90s till now. You're paying per kilowatt hour less than what was charged by the old monopolies per kilowatt hour back in the day. That is fact. It happened. That whole part of the plan worked out. What hasn't really worked out and what's becoming more obvious is the TDUs, which are regulated by the legislation that was created. The intention was the legislation and the PUC be substitute, ERCOT, all of that, be substitute for competition. And that's not happening at this point. And that's obvious in what y'all are even seeing in the base rate or the monthly rates being charged. The companies that you're getting your pricing from are either A, marketing to you and saying you don't pay a monthly fee because they're paying that fee and building it into the pricing and making the pricing higher, or B, they're just out and out charging it and showing you what has to be paid for the monthly amount to your TDU. So even though we're all seeing that increase happen on your bills, and it's happening across the board in most areas of the state that are considered quote unquote competitive, it's not due to that pricing from the wholesale market, the deregulated wholesale market, which this is just the latest chart I could find put out by Cliff Rose and Yes Energy. People do these charts all the time. Various entities put them out. The data is on ERCOT and PUC website. The prices, closing prices, you can see remain largely within, without, minus the spikes or averaging out the spikes, 0 to 50 in terms of the wholesale market and what the retailers are able to get that at. So what's happened over the course of years is that your TDU prices have been really where the increases happen, and now they're about 50% of your bill. And here's where the economic impacts on Texas happen with that and with this structure we have for regulation. They receive profit, TDUs receive profit, Encore in your territory, from infrastructure investment, meaning every pole they put in the ground, every line, every switch, all of that not only gets paid for, but they get recovery on it. And the recovery is close to 10% a year for the useful life of that equipment. So when y'all have a storm and you're already paying for equipment and equipment gets ruined in that storm, the TDU, Encore, gets to come in and replace that equipment and charge you for that equipment too, and then charge you a rate of return on that equipment. And the state of Texas, through the PUC, doesn't really provide what would be competition to that. They just sort of look at the documents, and we've always paid close to 10%. And so they just nod and say, okay, they want 9.75. Okay, let's negotiate around the edges here, and that's what we'll give them. So there's no control over the price increases then. It doesn't matter what happens in the market. If that piece of equipment costs more, Encore just chooses to buy it, pay for it, because they're going to get back their rate of return and get reimbursed for it anyway on the investment to you. What does this drive for us in Texas? There's a lack of innovation. There's no reason for Encore or CenterPoint, AEP, any of these companies that are TDUs in the area to say, let's put in new chargers here and let's use this type of equipment to put it in, or let's decide to go with some wireless type of provisions in terms of this new neighborhood coming in because we want to just try this out. If it costs less or saves money in the future on usage, it's not good for them, because the whole incentive is buy expensive, get paid back for it, get your rate of return on it, and make money into the future on it. So, if you're investing in the market, I always tell people this CenterPoint and Encore are solid investments because they will never in Texas lose money. This will always be a money making, no matter what they say. And when a storm comes in and they say, oh my God, it's going to cost us millions of dollars. No, it's going to cost us all millions of dollars. They're just going to collect it from us. So what's happening now and what we're running into and you're seeing stories about is the equipment's aging. They don't, the companies have grown so big since the 90s that they don't really have the ability to keep up with the territory. Encore's territory is huge. It's the biggest, and they also have the largest customer base in the state of Texas, CenterPoint right behind them. And after Burl, many of you saw the news coming out of the Houston and coastal area. CenterPoint just had to admit they hadn't trimmed trees in some areas for over a decade because they just couldn't get to that territory to do it. They also don't make money off of trimming trees. They got to pay for that. It's not an investment in equipment, so why prioritize it? And therein lies one of the problems on how we regulate these companies. So in your territory, you all have Encore. They filed for a base rate increase in June of 2025. That's a docket number, and our group, Consumer Association, is in that case. And they asked for an increase of revenue itself of $834 million to cover things like pay to employees, increased costs for the company itself. In addition to that revenue increase, they also negotiate around that percentage on the rate of return, or their return on equity is what they call it in the rate case, which will end up being around the 9.78% range again. If they got everything they asked for from the beginning, it would be on your 1,000 kilowatt hour usage, which is sort of the standard everybody uses when they compare rates, $7 a month for y'all. So $84 a year just for what they asked for. Now, the interveners are in the case trying to negotiate that down, and some of that has been successful. We're not allowed to talk about it because we all sign in the docket, we all had to sign the proprietary and keep everything confidential, but it is being negotiated. What is public, you can see in the docket 58306 online. And just for y'all's knowledge, because I noticed Walmart was being pointed to in the prior presentation as one of the providers. Walmart is so concerned about what Encore charges them to put in chargers, automobile chargers at their facilities and at their new stations, that they intervened on that issue in the Encore case because Encore is billing them so much to put the infrastructure in that they're having a hard time making that work for you all as customers to come charge at their facilities. On top of this case, the Encore resiliency plan that was just approved is over 3 times what they asked for in the rate case. Is $3 billion, and it goes because the chargeback for that will go longer for y'all. The amount per month is lower, but you're going to pay for 14 years into the future for that, and they're planning on coming in for. And the resiliency plan, just so y'all know what that is, they went to the legislature a few years ago and said, infrastructure's aging. We haven't really put the money into it, but we want the money from the customers to upgrade it. So not only are you going to pay for current build out, and as growth happens, build out in new neighborhoods and repairing the current lines, Encore customers starting in 2025 started to pay for this resiliency plan for them to go in and replace old equipment that they've already made the money off of, start billing you for the new equipment, and to do more tree trimming and what they call resiliency, put in new switches so that if we have another Winter Storm Uri, they can manage that a little bit better into the future. What do we ask for from Consumer Association? Well, we always come in and ask for something be done to control these rate increases. These are the only set of companies within the infrastructure, like I said, that don't have to compete. And we have a big problem along with AARP, who filed in this case they hadn't filed in a rate case in a long time and decided they had enough membership in the Encore territory to get in as well. And so we're asking for more transparency. If one of you who are not intervened into the rate case and have, signed the proper paperwork wanted to know really what was going on in the negotiations and who was getting charged what and what the company's getting for the poles and wires, you couldn't do it. There is no real transparency for that. Y'all can't see what are considered the proprietary documents for the company. I can see them. I can't even talk to you about them. Legislators are allowed to look at them. They're not allowed to talk about them, though. And it is a very closed process that the TDUs are able to lobby to get, so that in the end, only you will see what the increase will end up being and what gets approved by the PUC. You don't get to really see the sausage making of it all because you're not signed in and into this process. There are no public hearings on it. The PUC is not required to have any. There are no public discussions about it. The only discussion you will see in the end is when the commissioners get what is the final proposal and the interveners have worked with the company. So we're asking for more transparency in that. We think the public should be told what the company's getting paid for and some of the details. They should know what the higher ups are making and what the reimbursements are for salaries, what the company's spending on lobbying and entertainment and all those things that go into this. Because you're not only paying for the poles and wires, you're paying for the expenses. That $834 million is for the expenses for the company. And a lot of it is entertainment. You see Encore sponsor something, a lot of it's coming out of that you're paying for that. Encore's not paying for that. Encore's not paying to have their name on the stadium. You're paying to have Encore's name on the stadium. And a lot of that needs to be public. We're also asking for a repeal of some 2023 legislation that was passed by Senator Phil King. Some of you may know who he is because he's in your territory. He's from Weatherford area. He's been in a very long time. He's been friendly to the TDU since he was in the House. He passed a bill. He was able to pass a bill under the guise that it was saving lawyers' fees that allowed for these companies to ask for rate increases 2 times a year without PUC review. The law currently requires the PUC review every 4 years. So what he did was allow them to come in 2 times a year in there and get increases and then do a true up in this 4-year case, which is what we're in with Encore now. Previously, they were allowed it once a year, and most of the time they only came in if there was a reason to have the rate increase or rate change. If there was a disaster or something happened that they needed to come in and file for it. And they had to go through a 6-month process for it. What this 2023 legislation by Phil King did made it a 60-day process without any review. And the PUC, if after 60 days hasn't said no, has to automatically approve it. So that needs to go back to the old way. If you're feeling like you've had a lot of rate increases over the last 2 years, that's why right there. They've been allowed to do it twice a year, unfettered, and they're not being stopped by the PUC. And so our last issue, which may end up going way beyond me working with the legislature past my time for retirement, is our organization would like to see a full market reform in this area of ERCOT and the way we structure utilities in Texas. There's no reason in this day and age why there couldn't be some competition introduced into the build out of infrastructure as we progress in ERCOT and how we build out Texas. The old school way of thinking is one company had to do it, one company had to manage it, and they got the rate of return on that as a reward for taking care of what is a very hard system. But what's happened since 1999 to now is these companies have grown into huge monopolies that are no loss and no accountability. And I don't think back in 99 we expected Texas to be this big and this amount of growth to happen. And every time a new neighborhood's built, the local TDU gets that business and they get to charge what they want. And then y'all get to help pay for that as well to do that build out. And this is just an ongoing process that will never stop until somebody steps in and says, okay, maybe we need to start thinking about this differently and come up with a way that different companies could come in and build different sections. And then if they are able to build them for less expensive, we all save money and maybe somebody else can manage that area. Right now, some of you may live in co-op areas. I don't know where all of you live, but right now, the number one entities in terms of customer satisfaction are the cities and the co-op areas. They are also, and not by coincidence, the lowest rates in the state of Texas in terms of electricity. Are some of the co-ops falling behind on innovation? Yes. And largely that's due to the area that some of them are located in. There's miles of lines between the residents and the poles. But in terms of the co-ops that are in the suburban areas and in terms of what the cities are doing, the city of Austin and the city of San Antonio even really exceeding Austin, are way ahead for what they do for customers and the response. And there are reasons for that. Mainly, they're beholden to city councils that are elected. When there's a rate increase request in the city, it becomes a huge deal that everybody participates in, open hearings, and it goes before city council and people can come testify. And it's a very different process than where you all live in the Encore territory. So this is a little bit about us, the organization. We have other issues that we work on. I do a fair amount of insurance. I'm president of the board of Texas Watch, which does mainly insurance issues as well. And I don't know if you've invited them to speak to you. Interesting stuff, probably not in your category of issues, but interesting as well. If you'd like to look at our website, there it is. You can always email me also if you'd like to ask me questions and get involved with our organization. And I'm happy to answer questions as well if anybody has any questions as well. So,
Sandy, I'm intrigued why you called out the $3 billion on the Encore resilience plan. First of all, it was after Uri, the Texas legislature required within 12 months from every TDU, actually every utility, a discussion of what they were going to do for their own resilience. So came up with $3 billion. It was basically a rubber stamp. And they said, in addition to what we just told you about and told our investors about a couple of years ago, here's how much extra we're going to put into this piece of our operations. But I'm curious why you singled that out as opposed to if you look at for the publicly traded IOUs over the next 5 years, they have a combined expected capital investment approaching $100 billion. That's $100 billion that they are going to automatically just roll back into the rates. And by the way, I could really get incensed about how much of that is to bring electricity to the oil and gas industry in West Texas, specifically to benefit that industry. But again, I just wanted to point out that $3 billion, although what you mentioned about the aging infrastructure was all true, that whole $100 billion is, just barely a swim lane over, in my opinion, in terms of unrecognized, undescribed, possibly unnecessary or even unfitting expenditure.
So that is forthcoming, which you're talking about the transmission into West Texas.
Well, and that's just one of all of them had even before that. Before that $15 billion, there was still $70 billion that they had told their investors they were going to be able to spend in the next 5 years.
Correct. And that's all based on hearings that are still in process at the PUC. And so what he's talking about here is this plan that was really started by Texoga in the oil and gas industry. Texoga stands for Texas Oil and Gas Association, and they're a lobby industry. And Texoga sees a future for starting in West Texas where they produce energy for the grid at the sites where they're also doing the oil and gas drilling, that they're able to start generation themselves through, you know, new technologies that are coming about, whether that's the heat out of the ground or they come up with something else in the future. They know they're going to be investing in this because fracking and oil and gas and all of that is starting to level out. And obviously the politics of Venezuela and the market's not that great and gas is cheap right now and yada, yada, yada. So for about 5 or 6 years, there's been this push, but Uri gave the legislature and lobby groups a lot of um, fire and ability to lift up plans and thoughts for things that may or may not come to fruition in terms of what they're being sold as to the legislature. That line being one of them. We know we need transmission lines. Transmission costs and the congestion and transmission is costing us a lot of money, having to reroute electricity or not being able to bring it in. We've got a lot of electricity being produced in South Texas, and we don't have enough lines going into South Texas, but they don't want to talk about South Texas because that's not oil and gas, it's wind, right? It's wind and some solar, but mainly wind that's going in on the coastline and in the valley. And oh no, we're not going to talk about that, but we're going to build lines to West Texas. Has it happened yet? No, but it will happen. And you're right. It's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's where we'd like to see the competition. You and I talked about this on the phone. I would love to see the legislature say, let's have different companies bid for parts of those lines, whether or not they're managed by Oncor or other companies or the local co-op, depending on the route going out through West Texas. Why do we just say to automatically to Oncor, you get to build this and you get to get the billions of dollars from this? Will it cost billions? Yes. It will probably take a couple of decades to do, given versus the 5 years that people are saying it will take, because you got to take land to do it. And people fight that. And that takes years to do. And people don't want these wires going through their land. And then you got to reroute and figure out other things. I think that it's probably more realistic to say 10 to 15 years before something ultimately gets built. I focused on the resiliency plan because the resiliency plan and what you just mentioned earlier was legislation that was result of Uri, that the companies came in and said, well, sorry this happened, but if we get paid a bunch of money, we'll upgrade it. And then all the legislators go, well, why weren't you putting in the upgrades anyway? Now it's going to be more expensive. And they've all just sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, if we get paid for it, we'll do it. So, I mean, and then the bill passes, of course, and they're going to get paid for it. The reality of what they should have been doing all along is upgrades. We don't have standards for that. They should have been doing that stuff all along. The other states were doing it. Florida was doing it. Florida's done a bunch with resiliency in terms of hurricanes. We don't do that. Are we requiring CenterPoint to put in hurricane resistant equipment along the coastline? No. Why? Because they don't have to, so they don't do it. So now their resiliency plan that they've come in with does that. But they should have been doing it all along years ago when A, it was less expensive, and B, they wouldn't have had to rebuild after Burl. But there was nothing that requires them to do it. So all of the resiliency plans, although we need them, were an idea that came out of Uri of how to bring more money in. And now that it's 2026, buying that equipment, getting it in, tariffs added onto it now, it will just make the price even higher than what it could have been in the last 15 years if this would have been required of the companies all along. And that's mainly why I pointed out, if you wait to put a roof on your house until you have holes in it, it's going to cost you a lot more to repair the house. So
that's what I was make that comment. I live in a neighborhood where we have a lot of trees. They still trim the trees, but we still have trees come down and take down the power line. This last power outage we had last year, the power line in our alley came down, and I went out there and looked at it, and the wood that was holding the wires was completely rotted. I mean, literally the insulator on a piece of wood that was just a stick that I could have gone up there and broken with my hand. And that was the entire line. So they upgraded our line after the storm pulled it down and paid, and I'm sure charged maximum amount for a new line, and then had to replace all those connections the whole way at the maximum possible cost, as opposed to coming out there and spending 3 days of replacing it and knowing it would be resilient for the next storm.
Right.
We had 3 poles that were leaning almost 30 degrees now over Custer Road in Plano, and there's some cognizant people actually who live in our neighborhood, and it took a year to get them to come out here and address that. Otherwise, it was, we'll wait until there's an ice storm and 3 other electric companies from other states come in and help us clean up our crap, and then you'll have no power for 5 days.
And we have alleyways in our neighborhood that are wide enough that they could come and bury the lines, put in boxes for us, and we would never have another power outage ever. But all of our utilities run down through the alleyway. There's no poles in the front of our houses.
Right.
James, I had a question back to the Encore rate case. So as background, I think it was in 2017 when Encore had a rate case, and they made a big public display about how they were concerned about cost shifting as people put in renewable energy and rooftop solar and stop paying Encore's charges. And that they have a valid point that at some point or other they get a reduction in their variable charges. But okay, so did that come up at all in this rate case?
They don't talk about it because what they end up doing is compensating for that through increasing the rates.
Right.
You know, they're coming in and asking for the revenue increases and increasing rates, compensating for what they know what they're losing. They won't publicly say what they're really losing for that. Here's where they also, but you know, and that's really kind of also a retailer problem too. But here's where they really lose the money, and you mentioned that it's the variable rate. You know, they're a big part of their income is over the variable rate. And ironically, we've given Encore and CenterPoint, AEP, these companies, the program for the energy efficiency programs for the state of Texas. And then we wonder why our energy efficiency programs are so horrible in the state of Texas and aren't really effective, because these companies, if they actually implemented them, would lose revenue. If you're making people energy efficient, you lose that variable rate. Why? There is no incentive for it. And again, it goes back to our request to, in the future, this has to be changed. We can't keep continuing to do what we're doing now and expect that things change. Jim put a question in about the crypto mining and AI plants. I don't know that ERCOT or the legislature has really fully thought out the impact on it. I think they were sort of hit with that issue and not thinking, again, like we always do, forward thinking in terms of them locating here. But what happened, at least in the chronology of regulation, is 2023, the legislature told ERCOT, stop telling us what we need today. We need to have a future. We need to have a report that shows us our future. And that was just a couple of years ago, y'all. So when the report came out in 2024, y'all probably saw these headlines. The legislature the senators blew up at the hearing and said, what? How can you come in and tell us now we're going to have all these crypto miners and these plants coming in for AI, and that this might be the usage? And the PUC and ERCOT shrugged their shoulders and said, well, you told us we had to do it now. We always kind of knew it was going to happen, but y'all didn't know. So of course, everybody was up in arms and got yelled at and told, you need to make sure we know about this stuff. So now our plans supposedly include what may happen with that. SB 6 was passed in 2025 as a response to that. It has various parts that are all their own dockets. We're involved in the docket that's pricing of the large users, and it's called 4CP. Texas Consumer Association is involved in that because the way the large user base rate is calculated is different from the way y'all's are calculated as individuals in which you're charging your vehicles. You're paying a base rate that's set under the base rate case and then a usage charge. These large users get to negotiate them and play the system. And they have the 4 coincident peaks that they get their base rate charged on. And if they know their coincident peak reading day, they can either shut down their plant that day or slow operations and gig the system so that their average at the end of the year when they get the bill is lower than what they should get paid. Well, what happens in that system? What doesn't get paid for gets dumped on the residential consumers. So we've all been subsidizing that. SB6 came out, did a bunch of things, including requiring studies when an AI or a crypto mining plant goes in, see how much demand they think, making them pay for initial siting expenses, and then a study of 4CP, which will go into the 2027 legislature with out of the PUC. All that being said, in the end, if a giant line to a facility has to be run, you're going to pay for part of that, whether or not under the current system, whether or not you get use out of it. Just by virtue of being an Encore customer, Google decides to put an AI center somewhere in the Encore territory, they will only pay a portion of the build out for that. You will pay for under the guise of in the future it will be used by everybody. So just again, back to we need to think about now how the system works and redo regulation. That's one very good example and why people are mad about this at the legislature. They're seeing the entire customer base have to pay for these companies and subsidize them.
Could the restriction they put on states, restricting AI that they just put in the big beautiful bill, could that also come back down to, oh, you can't penalize them for their energy consumption or installation charges also? That falls under the quote AI category.
Yeah, they're not being penalized in Texas. In fact, here's what's happening, and this is going to happen. It happened pre SB6, but they put some rules around it. A lot of them have the income and the money, frankly, to have co-located generation. So they're doing on a large scale, which y'all are doing on your homes with the solar panels at the location of the AI center and doing it behind the meter so they don't have to pay Encore or anybody usage charges. And that wasn't allowed before, because we all have to pay and hook into the system, and then your energy you're generating at your house gets counted and you still have to pay a base rate fee. Well, they're powerful enough to do co-location, and also if they don't co-locate, to have contracts directly with Vistra or other generators. And that's where, consumers lose out, is they're getting to build their own infrastructure that they need for their particular plant or facility, but then the stuff that they don't have the ability to build, like the long lines or the switch for that area that has to be upgraded, we all get to participate in paying for and subsidize them on it. So yeah, in Texas, really, they've got a pretty fair, more than fair deal for locating here. And I think that's why so many are coming here, is they're allowed to do both. They hook in, but they're allowed to buy their own electricity or create it themselves and not participate in the grid if they'd like to stay out. And so that's a pretty decent deal.
Another reason why Greg Abbott's campaign fund is so large.
They are fair at lobbying, and they pay attention. Walmart is in the Encore case for the chargers. Google's in the Encore case for this issue. Google is definitely cutting their own deals in the Encore case. We don't know what they are as the other interveners, because once you're an intervener, your lawyers can talk to the lawyers of the company. So somewhere in that case, Google's cutting their own deal with Encore on hooking into the system. But interestingly to me, because we've never seen this before, the federal government intervened in the Encore case, and I assume that means the feds are putting something somewhere in the Encore territory too. But they're not saying anything to us, and it's out of the, and that is public. If you go look at the case, that docket, you can see all the names of all the interveners and which companies are in. And they're the general ones you'd expect. The cities and the territories where y'all are located are all, they formed coalitions. So like Dallas, Fort Worth, and a lot of the small cities, Arlington, smaller cities are in coalitions and have lawyers in the case. So there's those entities that represents their residents, groups like us, AARP, Environmental Defense Fund is in. They're fighting on issues y'all would be concerned about. They want to know about charges to build charging stations, and they're really EDF, who is full disclosure, a client of mine and has been for a long time, and I work on environmental issues with them. They're in the case solely for those issues. What is Encore charging to upgrade systems so that vehicle charging can be done, and also just the fees for that as well. And they're trying to get Encore to be transparent about any plans they have for those types of charging systems and any kind of plans they've discussed, like the impact of vehicle charging on their system in the case. And Phil, I mean, sorry, if we have another question on this, fine. People are asking questions in the chat too. So
Tell you what, let me at least put my 5 to 7 minutes worth of material on the table.
Okay.
Then we'll open it up. A lot of the questions that we're going into, we actually have prompts for, or want to have all three of us ready to answer any question that comes in. So
sounds good. Thank you.
okay, well, thank you. So yeah, go ahead and throw mine up there.
Where was yours?
They're both out there in it's a PDF. It's on the desktop. There you go. That's it. Next slide.
Oh, let me get it shared for everybody. If I can get it to show up. For some reason, they don't ever show up.
I think you closed it when you launched. Oh no, there it is.
Oh, it's there. It just doesn't, for some reason, this doesn't want to show it. No. For some reason, it doesn't seem like that's us.
Maybe do the entire screen and then share the entire screen and bring it up.
You mean under?
Yeah. See if everybody can see it now.
Well, for some reason, it just now it comes up. Okay.
There we go.
See if I can.
There we go. All right, you folks can see that. Next slide. I got a lot of material here. I will get off in 5 minutes. I can do it. I'm not even going to read these words. We've already talked about this. One of the issues is, with the exception of low and moderate income households, yes, we've seen a price of energy increase, but it's average for the United States. If energy was that big a concern from a pricing perspective, people would have used technology in the 80s to go ahead and automate their homes, to go ahead and figure out ways to use transportation more efficiently, this, that, and the other. In the United States, energy is relatively inexpensive. It's dirty and inexpensive. That's a different issue. If they were maybe charging $20 per gallon per barrel for your carbon tax on something, maybe it wouldn't be quite the same. But bottom line is, we don't have a lot of control, as you've heard, over the pricing. And Sandy, I'll have to go back and maybe share numbers with you and challenge it. Although we have seen probably a 50% increase in the TDU cost, if instead of starting that chart at 2022, where you saw the fairly level wholesale price that the other part of the market is doing, that has also gone up by probably 30% since 2015. So if you back that up a little bit, we used to be around $10 per megawatt hour of electricity on the wholesale market. It's closer to 20 now. And that's after, not even 15-year period. So it has also increased quite a bit. But bottom line is we can't control any of that. A little bit of it is being controlled by competition, but we're also buoying the whole system up by making it harder for some energy types and easier for others. Which comes under this, are we really regulating it the right way? Bottom line is it's basically keeping things the way it is the type of regulation that exists. So we can't, under the current system, do much to impact delivery rates, promote conservation, look at environmental impacts, look at consumer practices, which I think is an important one for both, especially talking to people with electric vehicles or solar. You aren't just consumers. You are consumers who can control your consumption and potentially even in a bidirectional fashion, or at a minimum in a managed fashion, as James brought up earlier. Being under a managed charging plan is a utility asset if the utilities embraced it as what's called in that industry a non-wires alternative. In terms of instead of building the system out for the worst possible peak case under your definition of what the system looks like, look at the other private capital that's already been invested. There is more storage in the paltry 3% of electric vehicles that are on the road right now than the utilities could ever imagine owning themselves and making part of their production and distribution system. So what does the future look like? I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the future looks like. Next slide. Again, we require energy. It's part of our cost of living, the quality of life. That's the phrase I was looking for. A lot of what we do assumes the presence of copious, cheap energy. There's the question of whether the little over 100 watts, the 100 watts that it takes your body to do everything that you think about, walk around doing, chew on, digest, everything else you do is worth the 849,000 watts that each of us consumes every day. And that's not even including the energy cost of any manufacturing that's done outside of the state of Texas that you import. That's a US figure. So in other words, for 20, 30 years, we've been pushing a lot of our energy consumption offshore, which we then buy back. If I added the amount of energy that's in those vehicles, those, whatever it is you're buying from the rest of the world, it's more than that 850,000 watts per day that you'd be consuming as a consumer. So it's not what I want to talk about isn't the position of the solar power industry or of NTEAA or of it's really just my views on some of the things that are missing from this market. Go ahead.
What do you mean by pushing energy offshore? You're talking about offshore wind?
No. Offshore of the United States. If you look at the energy generation per capita in the United States and assume that you as one person are taking your share of it, that's 849,233 watts per day of energy. You only produce from what you eat and need to exist as a human being about 120 to 150. So, all the rest of that is what it took to get that automatic teller machine to light up or dispense my money, or the banking system in back of it, or me being able to buy a bag of potato chips instead of having to farm my farm and this, that, and the other. So that delta between 120 and 850,000 does not comprehend the fact that if I buy something that wasn't manufactured in the United States, which we've been pushing offshore, the energy that it took to build those things that we purposefully, as a society, decided to let other people build for us, also have an energy component of how much that is. So it's well over 1 million watts of energy per day that you're consuming because of that consumption. And where is that coming from? So these numbers, the FFRDCs, the federally funded labs. This is Livermore publishes these. The last one that was published was in 23. Just shows that, you know, we've got all these sources of energy, and they then power. Some of that goes into electricity generation. Some of it is used in its native form, mostly for heat plants and other activities, divided up between commercial, residential, industrial, or transportation functions. The main thing to look at here is 2/3 of that energy is thrown away. Under this current energy in here, energy used here, 2/3 of it is discarded. Next slide. Normally, you could talk about, in the United States in general, it's about 1/3 transportation, 1/3 commerce, and 1/3 residential. Texas's numbers are very different. We have a lot of industry here. We also have to move across a pretty dang big state to move things around. All this is cheap to do, so we just do it. And so our number isn't the third that you would normally look at. What I want to point out is, so if you go back, this chart in the lower left, if you go back at the growth of electricity, this says generation, but generation and consumption are the same. They have to be balanced. That's the thing. Unless you're going to store it and never use it, that's the only way that it's off. I will point out that the EIA, the Energy Information Association, part of the DOE, there's about 1/10 of the energy, not quite 1/10 of the energy. Yeah, there's about 1/10 of the electricity production in Texas that actually does leave Texas. So we have private transmission lines that are going out to Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, a couple of other places. So not everything that you'll see from production is matched with the same numbers on consumption. However, if you look back over the last 10 years, energy in most of the country has been going down, even though population has been going up. There has been an awful lot going on in technology that has allowed things to be more efficient. Texas, probably add up those next 22. The increase might have been as big here as the other 22. Keep in mind that that means in 28 states, electricity consumption is going down. And believe me, you want to see utilities panic. You know, they're out there trying to prove a rate case and get refunded for their fees, and they've got bigger PUCs than we have, and they actually have to justify stuff, and they're having to justify it to a diminishing market. Everybody is thrilled that electric vehicles are out there. The industry is thinking about, you know, heat pumps for homes, or inductive heating for cement plants, and this and that and the other. So electricity is probably going to rise. We just want to see it be responsible electricity. But what I was going to point out is, of all of that growth, so the Texas increase, let's see, which had brought us from, you know, our peaks over that same period of time, probably went up from about 50 gigawatt hours to 85, 86, 87, something, or not gigawatt hours, gigawatt peak. Power. All of it over that same period has been met by renewables. The only gas plants, the only other generators that have come on over that period have been the smaller than megawatt local backup types of, there's a number of companies that you can buy, you know, microgrid resilience features for them, or who just build little venture capital peaker plants that only come up when the pricing on the wholesale market is high enough to justify them turning on. So all of that has been met by wind and solar.
That's mostly natural gas.
There's some battery storage plants that I think
battery storage. But the battery storage, it's hard.
It does the same.
Storage isn't a generation technology. It allows you to time shift things like wind and solar. You could time shift gas, but you know, the gas plants have to keep running. They can throttle up and throttle down some, but you don't turn them off when the price gets low. It's one justifiable place where the legislature has had some problems with thinking about batteries in the same sentence, because although they can dispatch into a real-time market, that market that ERCOT represents, that was caused by the deregulation in 1999 that went into effect in 2001. You've got long-term contracts, day-ahead contracts, the calls, and the spot market real time. Well, being able to push things out on a price signal is great for a battery, but it's still got filled at some other time by some other source.
Right.
Okay, next one. This was the one slide this is my get off slide. In the first conversation I ever had with John about this joint meeting, I wish I had been taking notes because I thought of 6 things that if they changed in the next 5 to 10 years could move energy prices either up or down significantly. And by significantly, I mean like 20, 30% significantly. Individually, some of them I'm going to highlight here. I already mentioned the whole issue of a carbon tax. Even if they were taking half of that and giving it back to consumers and telling them, here, chip this in on your health bill because we know we're causing asthma, et cetera, or help, donate, save the planet, whatever. But if there is a tax on carbon-based power, it's going to be a significant impact on energy prices. Now, what that's also going to do is raise up the other sources and make them look at, other ways of competing now at a different price level. Your total system costs can go down if oil and gas prices go up. It just means you have to work harder on the alternative. Right now, there's nobody even saying, think about the alternative. Okay, another one, and there's been about 6 times I've avoided chiming in on something that came up even in John's and most certainly in Sandy's. The TDUs, the transmission delivery companies, besides the fact that they wish that distribution didn't exist. It's messy. It deals with, millions of people as opposed to just the utilities. Transmission is easy to do. You put 60 assets in the ground, costs a whole bunch, but you put them in there and they generally work. Every now and then, a significant event might take down the transmission tower. All the rest of it, which their returns are lower on and their costs are higher, is what brings it to you at your house, makes it resilient, keeps the trees trimmed, runs their out-facing programs, this, that, and the other. Messy stuff. But if you think about from a what's the machine perspective, when they install that line that's rated all the way up the distribution line past the first transformer can that you're on, all the way up to the substation with whatever else your neighbors are doing, with the businesses that are on there, et cetera, their costs are generally fixed. Some maintenance issues, but whether or not you take any electricity through that is mostly not an issue for them. They have to worry about what the peak power is and whether that's going to happen at the same time as other people on that line are taking the peak power. So this, James mentioned the 2017 rate case where they, for the first time, said, well, not only are we losing income, they really weren't, because they're not getting paid the same way per kilowatt hour from they are, but they shouldn't be. If the consumption at the house goes down, their cost of delivering that peak power that you might ask for one night per year, or the day that you're doing maintenance on your solar system or something like that, their cost of delivery to you didn't change a bit. Their recovery to you did, because currently it's going in per kilowatt hour. Not how it works in commercial and industrial power at all. So that capacity billing, what's the size of the hose that comes to my house, and what's the chance that everybody on that distribution line is going to ask for it at the same time, is what drives the TDU's costs.
Right.
They would like to see that it's somewhat complicated. You think your power to choose is bad. The idea of people having to understand. But see, for me, that's what's more important. There should be some sense of responsibility that if I've done this capital improvement at my household and my overall impact is less, or I even have services, I could do volt bar compensation with my solar inverters, whether or not the sun is shining. I mean, there's all sorts of things that, again, that private capital could be a part of a smarter grid. And, you know, somehow this it's a two-edged sword. Right now, I understand why the TDUs are saying, well, as that goes down, my rate recovery is the variable part of it is a problem, especially when you consider that it really didn't change their cost of service at all. But that's just because, again, the system's being built to the worst case of everybody doing what they want without any discussion or interference from me, even though I've got as much capital in the ground collectively. I've got a lot more capital in the ground collectively that is part of an active grid and needs to be treated as such. Let's see. Increase of the delivery component ratio. We've already mentioned that. So it's up 50%. It's going to continue increasing. Again, $100 billion that they've told their public investors. These aren't the things I know about because I used to work for them or that I'm privy to because of a rate case. The TDUs in Texas plan on in the next 5 years spending $100 billion on things they're going to recover costs from you on, just for transmission. Just transmission. Now, granted, our consumption's projected to go up a whole bunch too, but there's this whole concept of cost causation. Let me find that one. Signal controlled prosumer behavior, cost of carbon, transmission infrastructure. This, one nice thing is you could just bring on these big power consumers in a way that, just like James was mentioning, if your car charger says, hey, the grid's hurting right now, guess what? You're going to have to move that to a data center in Minneapolis or something like that. Figure out how to answer your Google chat response. Sufficient pool of demand response, demand avoidance. Vehicle to grid technology's been there for decades. It's really a nuance of whether or not, your batteries collectively in your electric vehicles could be more than the buttress needed for any amount of wind and solar that's out there as an intermittent source. And it wouldn't interfere necessarily. It'd be a market open play. You get to say when you participate, there'd be pricing. You could say hands off. I got to go to Kalamazoo tomorrow. You could say, no, I never want my home battery to be below 50%. We've talked about all this charging. Most on a level 2. You call level 2 charging slow. Most consumers can actually charge into 120 volts and never need to charge their car at any other time other than when it's in their garage at night. Even the level 2 charging is a convenience that you could potentially work around to where, do I have to be able to fill the entire vehicle up? Do I use the entire vehicle 350 miles every day? Not bloody likely. So do I need to be able to fill it up in 8 hours? Not bloody likely. But somehow, wait. Smart grid, there's one I was looking for. And Sandy, maybe we put this one on the table later. This whole idea of transparency and cost causation and rate determination. Texas, last time I looked, and this was professionally, not just for interest, had the highest difference of industrial electricity pricing and residential electricity pricing. And although they'll swear up, down, and sideways that this is a cost causation and that they've got the books that show why the rate should be this for industrial, why they should be that for commercial, why they should be that for residential, why is Texas so different than 49 other states? I think it's because we're open for business. And, as Sandy mentioned a number of times, every time you pay your bill, you're paying part of keeping Texas open for business. And is that really transparent? And is that balance? I know I have one on here somewhere. Storage, if the price of storage came down, technology is not going to change much in the next 5 years, 10 years, if you talk about infrastructure build out, even if the technology existed. The cost of storage, even with the lithium-based storage, is, plummeting. There are other alternatives that are even, I think in that time frame possible. Obviously, if that comes down and you can marry up any power source with storage, we could be talking about a very different market and a very clean market. Oh, there it is. It's the big one right in the middle. Rebalance residential, commercial, industrial. So I was supposed to do this quickly.
That's quick for you.
That is quick for me.
Depends on your
Okay.
definition.
Ray, I've got a question for you. Is there any hope or any prospect that moving to a more distributed grid, microgrids, et cetera, able to help this problem in the next 5 to 10 years?
One of the prompted questions are what are the barriers and possibilities for market forces alone to embrace that under the current infrastructure, and maybe part of this redefine the deregulated component of the still TDU monopoly could service that. But right now, there's no incentive for anybody to change in that direction.
Is there any discussion around that in this 27 legislation?
Let's see, I'm ready to give up my soul spot. Come on up here. Let's the three of us just sort of field that question maybe as one of the first ones, because distributed energy. Okay, quick question. Who's the biggest electricity consumer in the state of Texas? Name a company.
ExxonMobil.
Try again.
AT&T.
Nope. Okay, I'll give you a hint. Who's the biggest TDU? Loses more electricity. Line losses. And that's my segue to that. So of what they got from the wholesalers to what got sold by the retailers, there's a percentage in between there that I did the math, and I just retired from maybe a company like that.
I think it's like 30% of what's delivered, isn't it?
Pardon me?
I think that loss is like 30% of what
No,
is
no,
delivered.
no, it's far less. It's
50%?
No. It's just barely more than one hand of fingers. I can't say exactly what Encore's line loss is because
does that mean 10%?
To predict what other TDU's line loss was,
5%.
But it's really, if you go look at the industry average, it's, let's just say, in between 5 and 10, and it's not 10. But that still makes them the largest consumer in the state of Texas from at least one perspective. The reason I bring it up is the whole idea is that distributed power, it's the whole Ohm's law inverse thing. I mean, the fact that we're building the 765 volt kV lines out to West Texas is because they're more efficient at higher voltages. Well, that's if you're going to carry it for 1,000 miles. If you only have to push it across the room, 120 is great. If you only have to move it down the street, the 11 point, whatever it is, kV lines are fine. So distributed energy, putting the use near where the source is by itself could save an awful lot of power because of just the loss factors. But it also allows, it's illegal in Texas in these communities to have a solar power farm because they're going over the everybody owns it and paid equally into it lines. So they, if you do it in one place, by law, it has to be done everywhere in the competitive area. Now, cities like San Antonio, Austin, et cetera, can say, no, it makes sense that this disadvantaged neighborhood is going to get our first resilience build and be its own energy community or have solar or this or that. You can't do it in this market. The incentives are just not there to look at.
Extra solar going up to Colorado and what is it, 283, 87 or something?
Oh, that's not here.
Are you Texas? Is that Texas generated solar?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
They're in the Panhandle.
But the Panhandle's outside Encore. That's outside ERCOT.
Yeah. Okay, so
Oh,
this
but
is
Randy,
our alleged panel piece.
let me point one thing out on one of your slides here. You were talking about the 2/3 of this waste. If you look at transportation, it's 79%.
ICE vehicles are so inefficient in terms of, the power that's lost. I mean, the scary thing is 40 years from now, we'll be talking about not carbon, we'll be talking about waste heat. And
Right.
everything that wastes energy like this is generally losing it as heat. And that's not the same thing as thinking about what solar irradiance is doing in the upper atmosphere and bouncing around and this, that, and the other, but heat is heat and it's not good.
When you think about it, our Chevy Blazer EV can go about 300 miles on the equivalent of about 2.5 gallons of gas. Can a gas car do that?
This may not be a hard question, but earlier we said 3% EVs in the market. So of all the cars out there, about 3% are EVs. What's the percentage of rooftop solar versus power generation in the state of Texas? Is there a number like 1, 2, 5, whatever that's known?
And Sandy,
This may not be the right question, but
no, that number is known. I don't know it. Somebody here.
It's like single digit.
Yeah. And I would say
Is it
solar
like
energy.
about equivalent to what the EV penetration is?
No, it's higher.
It's
Not,
Yeah.
not so.
Texas
Randy,
Solar
were you-
Energy has that. Aren't they coming to speak to y'all next meeting too?
Oh, no, we were gunning for 300,000. We're below 300,000 in the state for residential solar. Yeah. Okay. So compared to for the vehicles was 700,000.
Yeah.
So, but again, those are the installation numbers. Now your average solar residential installation is going to vary anywhere from as low as 4.5 kilowatts up to maybe 15, even 20. That's unusual, and it is a bimodal, by the way. It's a dromedary camel type. People either underbuild or overbuild their house. So it's, hard to compare it. I mean, those vehicles, keep in mind that maybe half of those are older than 3 years old, which means they have not even 100-mile range, which means they have 20 some odd kWh batteries in them, as opposed to the new ones, which have got 80 to 100, or some of them, if you're getting the land yachts with the electric vehicle things, or the Cadillacs, the land yachts, or let alone the Lightnings, the trucks. These will have like 120, 140 kWh batteries in them.
The Silverado EV can have 212.
So your question is still valid, but now I've got peak KW production versus kWh capacity versus, if I want to talk about V2G, what's their peak KW export? There's a lot of different factors involved. But your point is, okay, so you made a comparison that both are in their infancy, basically, even though it seems like they're so mainstream. Was there a follow-up to that?
My thought to that was when they get around 10%, the whole thing changes. Everything changes. Gasoline costs change.
I had that as one of my things. Once you've got 10% participation from what I'm going to call the prosumer class of assets out there, whether it's James, as I keep picking on James, but just managed charging. You don't have to have V2G to still make a private asset part. We got these VPP pilots that have been going on. What are we in our third pilot now? The virtual power plant, where a number of people with Tesla batteries, for example, can say, okay, play my system into the market. They can't do it directly, but they can have a wholesaler entity.
Give me about 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes. I will.
Did we lose our meeting? Oh, shit.
No, we're still here. I muted. Someone was talking and I muted them. So we're still on. Can y'all not hear us?
No.
I see that now, yeah.
Yeah, unmute NTEAA-NTREG.
I hear you.
Yeah, the person I muted was, but I'm asking to, because I have permissions, I'm asking to unmute, but it's not unmuting.
Oh, that was ours.
There they go. Yay.
Did it work? Okay. Yeah.
So again, our new energy sources, small modular reactors, geothermal, this, that, and the other, going to have any impact on electricity pricing in Texas in the next 5 to 10 years? I know my answer, and it's got 2 letters. Anybody else on the have an opinion?
Opinion, I'd like to see it happen. Through the, especially through financing and encouraging distributed networks.
Okay, but with the new power source like hydrogens and
Oh no, I'm thinking more
geothermal,
solar, wind, battery.
No, those are there. They may not be there big, but they're there. Sandy, what noise are you hearing in Austin about leaning on new energy technologies to bail us out of any future mess?
Well, a part of the Proposition 7 that was passed, which would provide subsidization for new gas plants. Y'all remember that on the
8.5 billion of the 10 billion.
Right. So the other part of that 10 billion is supposed to be for DERs. And that is under rulemaking right now at the PUC. If y'all aren't participating and are interested in that, jump on in. Sierra Club and EDF are involved in that. But yes, there is a little bit of money and a little bit of like encouragement. But in terms of and this was already brought up by several of you, it disrupts the market, because if you're producing something free and putting it on the grid, that's displacing something for sale on the grid.
The resilience piece of the $1.5 billion of Prop 7 that passed is really looking not at, it's possible somebody could come in with a new energy source, but almost all of that's going to be local gas turbines, or it's going to be
Correct.
a microgrid that's got maybe some solar or this or that. None of all the noise that you hear. I wish there was a way I could just bet against the hydrogen economy investment that's gone on in the last 5 years.
Sure.
The what economy?
Right. Hydrogen.
The idea that, it's always been 20 years away since 1860.
Fusion.
And there's great things out there. You got a fuel cell that can do amazing stuff, but nobody is gonna, sweetening natural gas by pumping some of it through current lines is not a hydrogen economy. If you want to go to ammonia and hydrogen-based production and only have water as an output, you got to be able to get a volatile material to every house in the U.S. They can have trillions of dollars.
You have to get oxygen too. You burn air, you're not going to get just water.
Okay, so bottom line is, I think lots of research needs to be done. None of these are for fixing any energy problems or energy price increases we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well,
I don't know what the
current belief right now is that you just have to go someplace else and steal what they have. And but the crazy thing about that is, we're bringing the oil companies. The oil companies have no interest in lowering the price of oil. The Saudis proved that 30 years ago.
And they are long-term bankers. They know better than to go into volatile markets. They're not even investing in their own assets in the U.S.
Right,
because it's too volatile.
Right.
Okay. Go to another one.
Yeah, but one more.
North Texas population increasing by 50% in the next 20 years, yet ERCOT's power consumption projections in North Texas show it doubling in 5. Hence this issue of how do we get all this power? We talked about transmission investments over the next 5 years. It takes 7 to 9 years to complete a transmission line. Longer anywhere but Texas. That's actually considered fast in the industry. Large natural gas plant, besides the fact that you can't buy one with less than about a 4 to 5 year lead right now, you'd have to do all the same EPA permitting, installation, this, that, and the other. So is the foreseeable future going to be met by increased scarcity pricing, not just in that delivery side, although $100 billion divided out to each of us over 5 years, that's, what did I figure? That's $3,000 per interconnect, something like that. We get to pay over the, back in through our rates. Is scarcity pricing both as a combination of the generator scarcity because they can't make enough, or the distribution scarcity going to increase prices then over that same period of time? You're only here to talk about how bad it would be. What, Sandy, you go ahead and tell us your opinion.
Who's talking about how bad it would be?
Well,
So clearly what's happening in the ERCOT market and has been for years is that solar and wind are filling those gaps. Where we were at just a few years ago is there was no way to store that. And that's where we were running into that problem from 5 to 7 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m. to the switch over to gas, and pricing would spike during that time period. But now batteries, we have more batteries coming online than I think folks ever expected. So back to your chart of what we're losing and then line loss and all those other issues too. The generation is there during the day, especially in the summer. And we cannot overemphasize that enough. There are times during the day in the summer when the sun is shining all over the state of Texas that the solar companies are paying entities to take the electricity. They're paying to take it, they're calling around and saying, can you take this? We can't load it on the grid. It will unbalance what's happening on the grid. So once we can figure out that balance in the short term and storage happens, they're on a greater scale, there'll be a smoothing out in the short term. For the long term, though, I don't know that anybody really can predict, because those numbers now, as I mentioned earlier, are based on what we think is going to happen in these AI centers and data centers and large users locating here. That's not based on the population growth. That's based on large users, that giant number that we see. And that's where people are scared about what's happening. So
and I would say that's a rightful scare. I mean, the idea of our population going up by 50% in 20 years, when you consider that it took 150 years to build out the electricity grid the way it is right now, the possibility of building it out and by 50% again in 10 to 20 years, given those times. I mean, I got at Encore there are more lawyers than there are certain other engineering departments, hired guns. But that is almost a practicable problem. The doubling the power requirement in 5 years, as being asked if you look at the interconnect queue, is just almost audacious. I don't even know.
And that's how SB6 is supposed to be working. Now, instead of us guessing if they're locating here, they have to file a piece of paper saying they're considering those AI and large user data centers over 75 megawatts, have to file something so that we at least know they're coming, and they have to get a study done and pay those. That was all out of SB6 so that we aren't blindsided in the future. The population growth one too, I mean, don't think of that in terms of new meters, 50%. That could be children in the same household. That could be people that are moving into existing properties or places being built where there's already infrastructure there. So, and again, if we can harness the sun and capture it for the evenings, the state will be a lot better off. And I think that's in the short term. That's why you see so many investors coming in with these giant battery facilities and locating them. It's free. They just pay for their batteries and get them in, the investors, and they're getting the solar for free on a lot of days and storing it.
We've only got 0 time, but there's one more of our canned questions I got to read because I think it's important to the electric auto industry overall. Of all the company names that you saw put up there that are doing DC fast charging, I can tell you none of them are making business. One of them is making business profit so far, because I've seen their costs, and even gaming the 4CP, and as difficult as it might be to put a little station with 4 300 kW plants in there. Oh, by the way, that's as much as everything else that was on that distribution line before that, and you wanted on this plot. That's a difficult job for the utilities. But if you look at the infrastructure for that 4 pumps, it costs almost the same as a 4-pump gas station. The cost of the DC fast chargers, cost of the property, you're actually lower on your operational costs. And yet, the difference between the markup of gasoline, which the difference between the wholesale and retail price is it's close to 10%, but that doesn't include all of the operational costs. So their take-home profit is more like 2 or 3 or 4 cents per gallon. Take the same electricity. Remember, they're buying at commercial rates, not your home rate. They're marking it up closer to 500%.
But they did have to pay for a feed expansion typically, that you can't just
Actually,
say,
not
well,
true.
we'll-
Not
we'll-
true. No, the majority of them, and I know I heard that from Sandy. There is a schedule. It's called the schedule. So there is a document called a line extension schedule, and if the utility determines that you are on a circuit that didn't need upgrades past, your first big distribution transformer or the substation. So in other words, there was capacity there for that. They have an obligation to serve. They have a published schedule that says, well, over the life of that service being there, which utilities think in 60 years, so they are able to say, here's how much money I will put against the construction of that, which of course they get back in your rate changes. But I would assert that half of the DCFCs that go in, other than these 20 and 30 stations, which were out in the middle of nowhere that didn't have the power infrastructure around it, I would bet that half of the DCFCs that are going in there did not have that upfront cost. The cost of the purchase, the licensing, all of the rest of it is the same, and yet they somehow think that in perpetuity, your cost at that charger, if it was only that same somewhere in between 2 and 10% above my commercial rate of 8 cents with the TDU cost included, 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour, should be, what is that? 8.8 cents per kilowatt hour? No. I'm sorry. 9.2.
9 or 10.
9.2.
TDU is 8 cents?
What's that?
TDU is 8 cents now?
No. Total all in, TDU and cost of electricity for a commercial site is 8.5 cents.
Okay.
Right. And you have to, for the ones already in the city and like you said, in capacity, you have places like Walmart, and this is why they're in the Encore rate case. They're buying that for their facility there, not just that facility, for all of them in the territory from one source. They've got a commercial contract. So all they're doing is attracting customers that will come charge and shop, so they get a dual benefit, and have that 500% markup. They have the space out in the parking lot for it. It's just the minor investment into that, those lines, and usually from the store or the facility. And Walmart, as y'all know, a lot of times is purchasing the property they're on. They're not their owners.
I go back though, at when you get 10 or 20 or 50% of the vehicles out there on a road, and they realize that, wait a minute, my options are A, I don't need you at all, and B, somebody else figured it out and is selling it to me for 10 cents, not 50 cents per kilowatt hour. That whole market is going to be nothing like what it looks like right now, in my opinion.
Well, the second generation lease they sold, they did a leasing deal in the Atlanta area. I remember hearing stories about those for like $99. Well, people went and bought the leased cars. There were no charging stations. There were fights at charging stations because people were like, I have to charge my car. Because at that time, the charging infrastructure. Well, who's the profitable company? You said one company is profitable.
I know that how I know this is in doing an analysis, and I know how much is being charged to the TDU for that service at that site. I could even see exactly how much was being consumed versus even if their cost from the retailer was zero. And there was only one that cleared the threshold, and I've already gone further than I probably should. I'm not going to say, because these are proprietary things. I just wanted to point out that the charging industry right now is betting on the come They're investing. It's one of these Tesla things. For 10 years, we can invest and grow bigger. Maybe someday we have to turn a profit.
But you know, the gas station model was
There's no
always,
profitable charging company out there at all except for
Maybe one, because I know that only one of them took
So
in,
we're over-
only one took in as much money as they owed the mandatory TDU charges.
and for future build out, just
Said more than I should say.
Sandy had a point.
Oh no, I was just going to add that, you know, that was the whole gas station model applies in the model for charging. The idea of you filling a gas station is not to make the money off the gas, it's get you in the store for the $4 soda and whatnot. And that's why the restrooms are so nice in the Buc-ee's. It gets you to walk through the entire store to go to and you'll buy something on the way out.
And also Bucky.
The profit at a gas station is higher than what you said, because when I had a gas station, gas was 50 cents and I was making 8 cents a gallon.
Like I said, it's in between 2 and 10. It's 2 and 10 cents, but now the gas was also less, right?
Gas was 50 cents and I was making 8 cents. That's a big percentage. Much bigger than what you said.
Yeah, but you're right. $500.
Tell you what, there were so many topics that could have gone off, and I probably am partially responsible for letting the clutter of all the possible topics be as large as it was. I think probably in the future there's opportunities for us to do more joint meetings on more discrete topics. And Sandy, I want to thank you so much for keeping us grounded to earth.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was a great meeting.
And yes, thank you for your service. Keeping Austin honest for us.
How can we help?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we talked about this the other day. I just want to say and can't emphasize enough that as individuals, you should find out who your state legislator is, your senator and your House member, and engage. You don't have to be registered as a lobbyist. Y'all are way smarter than just the public on these issues because you're owners of the vehicles and you also have these types of meetings. And even just one or two good constituents who stay engaged with their legislators can help turn the tide on some issues. You'd be surprised, but that really is how it works. They don't like to see form letters come in on their emails or get the phone calls where people have been told what to say. They like engagement, and the staff likes engagement and knowing the constituents. So go to your legislator, find your legislator, and please engage and tell them you're concerned about pricing in the future, and also the ability to drive the type of vehicle you like or have solar panels and do it in a way that it's benefiting the overall grid as well, and that you're paying attention to these issues. It would be extremely helpful to groups like mine and AARP and others. The more of us, the more powerful it is. And surprisingly, not a lot of people do that or have the time to do that. But if you have the time, please do.
Is leaning on them for TDU transmission transparency in these TDU businesses?
Absolutely.
How exactly would we say that? Please.
I think you say, well, I've been seeing the headlines that my rates are going to go up again, and rates continue to rise, and it's hard to find the information, and we can't see, how the company is getting this money over and over again. It's, the system online, and I probably should have put that up on screen. The system for showing all the paperwork was built in, I don't know, maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's still the same filing system. And it is antiquated. It's not easy. There aren't public hearings, and tell them there's no way for you to publicly participate in a meaningful manner in this process without going to your city leaders and having them raise it at your city. I mean, it is really, really difficult. And you would like more of a say at the PUC as a consumer.
If you want to use the industry buzzword, because they use it all the time, is I need to see the elements of cost causation and know who they're benefiting and whether I'm one of them.
Right. What's driving? Why am I paying this much more? What's driving all of this? legislators are hearing generally, when I go talk to staff and legislators, they are generally hearing from people they're tired of paying these bills and getting surprised when they open the next envelope how high that bill is, and no way to control those costs.
Just a quick one, that's kind of unrelated, but are we ever gonna adopt the FERC standards and have the reliability of the grid that the rest of our country has?
Not in my lifetime, I don't think it'll happen.
Okay.
There's still this very Texas feeling that we can't be part of all of that. What did positively happen out of Uri is that we built DC lines. So there are technically now more avenues, and even we always had this connection, but it's being kind of shored up to Mexico too. So
If I will go through the numbers with you, but if anybody ever brings up those 7 DC ties as part of a resilience issue, it can be dismissed. It is
it's not
insignificant. It shouldn't even be brought up. I'm sorry, but
you're right on that. Yeah,
that's just
it's really horrible. Until it's back and forth, and until we can engage in selling to other markets too, that will not happen. I mean, but for Texas, having additional DC lines, that was, I mean, on our scale of things, it was a big step for the state of Texas.
It was, but it's just like the $8.5 billion that's going in for the resilience on behalf of Uri wouldn't have fixed the problem, let alone the next problem. And oh, by the way, it was another gift to the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, meaningful is a separate thing. Whether something's meaningful is separate than what we did. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And
Thank
thank
you
to our live and virtual participants today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great meeting.